Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you as usual from the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida, in the Extreme Studios. I'm going back to 1968 tonight, and I've asked two young people to join me tonight. I say two young people, but it's really one. It's the young 20-something Professor Pixel, also from Central Florida. And I have LK, the 80s child, much like myself. And we're going to be discussing tonight Columbo. We just got through, gentlemen, going over season one, the first several episodes, and we got a lot of whiplash from everybody, seeing as how it was the first watch for Pixel and I, and not you, LK, about, well, why the hell didn't you do the first two damn TV special movies? Well, that's what we're here to do, and we're going to be doing the first one, Prescription Murder. This one, guys, is pretty interesting because there's definitely some difference between what we've come to know out of the first season of Columbo with some of the things we're going to dive into it. I'll start off by simply saying, wow, what a pretty intense and dark episode. And man, definitely some interesting things to talk about. This is his very 60s vibe to it, whereas I thought the show definitely had a 70s. It's hard to delineate a specific time frame when it happens, but this was 3 years earlier. And of course, it was based off of a play from the same guys that created the show. So I thought that was interesting. And boy, all I'm going to say is we got some good-looking guys and some good-looking suits and some good-looking women and some good-looking sets. We got a lot of good-looking things to talk about this episode, too. I think the ending is going to be something we're going to have to talk about. But I'm going to start with you, Professor Pixel, since you're also like me on the first watch. And then we'll go to LK, who's got some knowledge of Columbo and has probably seen this before. Give me your initial reaction.
I was kind of flabbergasted.
Also,
It's Columbo. We've loved this season of Columbo going through, but somehow going to this pre-Columbo has given us what I feel might be one of our best episodes overall. I'm really enamored with it. I loved going through this. It is a good step longer than a usual episode, which is what, an hour 15, and this is an hour 40. But
I feel like they were all roughly the same length. Around an hour and a half. With the rest of the time, of course, would be for commercials. It feels longer, though. I will say that.
I disagree. I actually didn't feel like it was long at all.
Okay.
Like watching it, it just had me captured in every moment that it flew right by.
Yeah, very dark episode, and there's some specific reasons I'll get to that. LK, what's your initial take on this episode? I know you've seen it before.
Well,
I had no idea what to expect.
While I hold my champagne glass between my second and third fingers and take a sip.
Well, that's how you should do it.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic movie. You get to see the beginnings of Columbo, but the one thing that really stands out, at least for me in this movie, is how much more, if I say correctly, put together in Detective Columbo is here. He is not the rumpled mess. He still, likes to play a little bit, and of course, I mean, with Dr. Ray Fleming here, he can't help but be not underrated, but what word am I searching for? I'm blanking here. Anyway, it'll come to me some point. But it's a fantastic episode, and as we'll talk about, I mean, you have, even as you go through the rest of Columbo, this is one of the most cold-blooded murderers that shows up in the entire series.
Not only is it cold-blooded, at least for season one in this first particular episode, I know we have one more to take a look at. This is by far, to me, it's a totally different Columbo in the sense that this guy's, I'm going to argue hardcore here towards the end, that he's really an asshole and he's really a bully, and I almost don't like him. I'm not being very serious about it here too, but as we like to dive in and start talking about the acts and what transpires and stuff like that, and things that pops us to us, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and get us going, Professor Pixel, as you usually do.
It's a party night, the city, and we can see a married couple is together with their friends. They're all dressed up nice, ready to celebrate 10 years. It's their 10-year anniversary. And what's the name? Dr.
Ray Fleming.
Fleming.
How could I forget
Dutch name, even though he looks like he's Eastern European, but that's okay.
Yes, Dr. and Mrs. Fleming. And through the night, he's chatting up his friends. There's this pretty young thing that walks on by, and he's getting a little friendly with her, but not too friendly. He's surrounded by people. They're watching. And his wife is right there. After the cake, he gets a call asking him to come as soon as possible. And he goes ahead and he dips. He tells his wife, "I'm sorry, it's a house call. I got to take it. I'm a doctor." And so he goes over to this swimming pool. It's out. He's driven. And we see another pretty young thing. This one he is friendly with red hair, fiery. And as she gets out, he takes her into his arm, ruining that suit, but takes her into his arms and just kisses her instead of telling her that he loves her, because he doesn't. But that's our introduction to these two. And he goes ahead and makes sure to have a discussion about, we're ready, aren't we? We're ready for what's to come. And she has some doubts, but he calms her down. It's going to be okay. He knows she can do it.
Yeah. Okay. It's always interesting because the way we choose to look at things and what pops out to us. And I've just heard Pixel's initial commentary and setup. What's your take on this opening gambit here?
Well, I know you'll talk about this too, but when I was watching this again, my first thought of seeing the party is, oh my God, Rob is going to love this scene.
Go ahead, keep going.
Well, I mean, you will talk about, but in terms of just how impeccably and immaculately dressed, everybody is, and
damn it, I'm an empty vessel. God, I'm such an easy read.
That Gene Barry wears his tuxedo, and of course, what's brilliant. Again, one of the brilliant things about this episode is just immediately within the first couple minutes, it's already set up. We see through the 20 questions game. That's what they're playing. Mm-hmm. How brilliant he is and how brilliant he thinks he is.
Yes.
And that he believes he is always the smartest person in the room. And everything kind of goes from there. And I'll just add in too, I don't know, did you recognize his assistant district attorney friend?
It was a guy that was at least on an episode of the Star Trek, the original series, and I didn't even bother to look him up, but I'm convinced that's him. That was his district attorney buddy.
Yes, he's in that, but he was also in another episode of Columbo we just watched.
Damn it. See, in one eye, out the other.
He was the vice president in Short Fuse.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Burt Gordon. Or no, I'm sorry. That was his character's name. It is
not to be confused with Burt I. Gordon.
Yeah. William Windom. And the funny thing too, Burt Gordon. I wonder if that was a nod to the famous or infamous B movie producer Burt I. Gordon.
I'm trying not to get derailed. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a fantastic set of scenes. I love the use of sound, and I'll kind of talk about that when we get a little bit further into it. And then of course we get again some of the beautiful just editing work in this, where we go from him, kissing and going crazy with the hot redhead babe, hard cut to his wife looking as frumpy as possible.
Yes. I think it's a nice opening gambit by all the season 1 episodes we've gotten used to. This one seems to be a bit more elaborate, more of a setup. Columbo doesn't even show up for the first act for the most part, and that's okay. Some people say, it's not a full end of Act 1 until all the major characters appear, and that, of course, the killer in an episode's got to be somebody you've seen early, and of course you can say whatever rules you have or go by them, but I was thinking of this going, this is supposed to be the first thing. In a way, I wish we would have done these two first, but since they were movies, we intentionally ignored that. And I think growing up with the idea that the TV show based off a movie is not going to be the same, and boy, were we wrong. And of course, this is the time in the 60s when we talked about the quality of writing being pretty high, where they would get a lot of great second-rate not second rate sounds bad, but B-level talent to support it. And I think that's very strong in this episode as well, even though this is 3 years earlier in 1968. So we're looking at 32, like 56 years ago. Jesus. It's a fantastic opening here, and you're absolutely right. Gene Barry just simply crushes it. I mean, Peter Falk looks the best to me that he's looked ever in this episode as well. Their suits are sharp. They're very basic. It is, of course, a major irritant that he's matching his pocket square up to his tie rather than a shirt. I understand that's how 99% of people do it and get it wrong for the most part. You can do it however you want. But then, it's just everything. He's got the right length on his cuff and everything. So I can't complain. He's a good looking guy, but he is a therapist, but he's not one of these emotionally, so how does that make you feel types. He's just very hardcore where he listens and he tells people some things and that's it. And what's interesting to me too is, again, we talked about the mid to late 60s, how this is pretty much the peak part of a boomer generation in society, where you started seeing, the excesses of the post-war boom starting to come into play in terms of people starting to get on opiates, people doing a lot of drugs, counterculture. And you can argue that would be anti-war and how that was anti-big government and all the politics behind it. But the whole self-help thing and finding yourself kind of stuff and feminism and all that really is head and shoulders very new at this time. And it's very prevalent in this episode, because I tell you, the thing I thought that really got sub in this episode well, despite all the histrionics, and that is, we don't really have any reason at all to not like his wife or understand why he doesn't love her. And we never, in my opinion, find that out at all in this episode, which I think makes him very cold-blooded, to the point you'd mentioned earlier. So much so that when you're watching it early on, I thought, holy crap, she did a great job with the cake. She wheels it out from the kitchen. You already tell she's a little miffed or irritated. She's not liking all this attention. Sometimes that happens with couples. Some love it more than others. But to me, I go, well, yeah, she's got sparklers on it, wheels it out there. I'm like, man, that shag, something's going to go up in flames, right? But I thought she was just kind of sweet. And you're right about the hard cut when he comes back home and she's looking all frumpy, because she seemed like a nice woman. She didn't seem like a harper where you're like, yeah, just whack the bitch. It wasn't like that at all. I thought she was very solid in it. So I thought, okay, who's he going to kill? Is he going to kill his wife, or is he going to kill the young one? Because we really don't know that. And the young one is one that, do you love me? I know we shouldn't be together. I know these are the rules, but I want more. Typical same thing. And that chick, I think I looked her up, was a Miss Ohio or something. She was a smoke show, going to be in Miss Universe or something. And I thought, how daring this must be for the 60s to show a woman like that. The scene where they're kissing or whatever, they of course don't go hardcore. It's kind of interesting because she comes out of the pool. You see all the water coming down off the back of him. And you're right, this is just very good looking TV. And with the hard cut getting into it, you see how sharp on his feet it is, because the thing that they would only allude to in television back in the days, now they'd be more open about it, is he basically tells her, yeah, I lied to you and I'm sorry, because she knows he had an affair before. And so she basically gave him the ultimatum. And we find out during the conversation that she had a rich dad, kind of helped him out, get him on his feet, but it's not like an I own you kind of thing. It's just, she seems like a very generous woman that really does love him. Like I said, there's no whatever. And she just wants, to have a real marriage. She even mentions that, since they don't have kids or anything. And while she's sitting there, I thought, what a transformation. She's like, yeah. And she mentions even once during the party and later on about basically, well, as a wife, I'm supposed to be giving you sex. She doesn't say it in those words, but that's what she's saying. So when he comes home, you're like, yeah, he just put 1 or 2 loads in his squeeze. And now it's like his wife wants some too, because he lies to her and says, I'm sorry, we're going to go on a vacation to Acapulco. And then we get this elaborate setup in the next major scene here about how he's going to use his lover to dress like his wife so they can get on a plane, fake a little argument so that she can leave, so she can do all that stuff. And this is what I mean by being very drawn out in the first act, because we don't see Columbo till a lot later. And I thought, this is just very delicious. And Gene Barry's just killing it here. I know we've talked about the strong personality types we've had in all the other episodes, but this guy's very measured, very calm. And wow, I could not take my eyes off of him. He was that good from the get-go.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask you real quickly. So did you buy her quick reaction? Because, I mean, she comes, when he comes in, she's mad. She mentions the fact that she's calling a lawyer. She's ready to divorce him. And then, of course, he finally turns around and says, well, no, I'll tell you the truth. I was meeting with his doctor, we're going to go to Acapulco. And then suddenly, boom, it's like a switch flipped and like, oh my God, this is great.
It's very sudden, but the way I tried to frame it was the fact that, again, showing women in a position of power like this is relatively new. Back then, I think in the 60s, where she was independent and also very graceful, we don't see anything from him, like any reason why he has animosity towards her. And that's what I'm saying. When I mentioned this, I felt like it's a very feminist, progressive episode. It's because she doesn't need him. She's not saying, "Oh, I own your ass. You need to do what I say." Nothing controlling whatsoever. She seemed very genuinely in love with him, I thought. But it's that, hey, I'm not younger. She was attractively dressed. She by all accounts was a middle-aged keeper. I mean, nothing wrong with her at all. And so it makes you wonder, what is it that this guy's looking for? And of course, we can always say the answer is simple. It's young stuff. But the dude's extremely smart. He knows where his meal ticket is, but basically he would lose. He mentions his whole practice if they go through divorce, and he doesn't want to happen because he knows that's the case. And that's why ultimately one of the reasons he kind of alludes to why he's got a whacker. So the switch flip, I know what you're saying, but I think it's also that thing where she knows what's going on. She's trying to give herself the best chance to have what she wants, which is a marriage. And he did do, I thought, a fairly decent job of thinking on his feet and not like winking at you or whatever like that. And I thought, wait a minute. Again, it was almost conflicting in a way where you go, is he going to kill his young lover? And then you're like, no, it's going to be the wife because she's the old one, right? That's what's going to happen. Right. So I thought the fact that it wasn't 100% clear until right after, he, and his wife had that conversation. I like that. It wasn't immediate, like in the Columbo episodes where we see, okay, we know this jabroni is going to get killed in the first minute or two. I mean, I did like them stretching that out a bit.
Okay.
Yep. It's. I have it on the side as well, so I'm looking at it right now, and she's just got wet. But because we didn't get there yet, but that is pretty much what you say is the plan. With the young one going ahead, coming over, right as the body's already strangled. He's had these gloves, and I do love the close up as he's putting on the gloves, and then they cut to his hands holding a drink, and then that's when they go through with, okay, here are the things that I have to get ready. Our flight is at 10. Oh, I'm going to don't forget to call the cleaners, honey. And she has to call because she's going to leave her laundry out by the door for them to take to clean in the morning. And he goes ahead, and while she's doing that in the other room, he's hyping himself up essentially to get it done. Putting on the gloves slowly again. He gets them ready, puts them behind his back and approaches, and he thinks once she's hung up the phone, he has his moment. Then she turns around.
That was cute. You knew that was coming.
Yes, honey. Take a look out that window real fast. And then he commits. And all while this is happening, the phone rings. Do we ever get an answer to what that phone call was? It wasn't important. It was just a call, just to help intensify the scene. But he chokes her out. She drops to the floor, hitting the piano on the way. And then he starts getting ready, starts his setup. He takes his second suitcase, starts loading it up with silverware, couple candle holders,
AKA it was the doctor in the bar with the candelabra.
That's right.
I'm sorry. I thought it was funny. But they show his hands around her neck, which I don't know that we've saw that really in the Columbo episodes, right? So this is probably the most physical and intimate kill that we've seen. Yes. I don't know if they chose to change that for the television shows or whatever, but to me, there was something about, well, if you're going to show a husband killing his wife or vice versa, the way to do that is show that intimately, but they didn't do the full-on thing. But I was surprised based off of what we've been conditioned to see already.
And Irony Christian is saying in the chat that, it was a stage play first, which is why it's so strong compared to the rest of the season. That makes sense, but also just the delivery from the actors, all the way up to when the pretty young thing comes running in. What's her name? Katherine? No. Yes, maybe. And sorry, what was that?
No, it's Joan.
Joan. Catherine's the actress's name. We reversed mixing up names earlier. She comes in and she is shocked by the sight of a dead body over there, but he tells her to be strong, get ready. We have to get going. And you could never do this story now because there's no way she would have gotten past security in the airport. Ever.
Pixel, you grew up with, God, you grew up in an age where you didn't remember the sexy days of flying. LK, do you remember those days? Remember when people were actually nice, the hostess and hostesses and all that, flying out of Florida? It was incredible, man. It was awesome.
Oh yeah, no,
Smoking on planes. You didn't have to wait. TSA, what is that? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was a kid, I was probably about 7 or 8. And my family, we flew to Hawaii for a vacation, and we were fortunate enough. My dad was able to get first class tickets, and so we were sitting there. The movie wasn't interesting, and my dad was like, hey, you want to go upstairs? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And so yes, going up. If you ever looked at the old 747s with the little bump on the top, that's where a lounge used to be.
Yeah.
And going upstairs into the lounge, had a Coke. There's a small piano up there. I mean, yeah, it's a whole nother world.
And Pixel, the thing about that too is like, okay, these are obviously set pieces, right? I'm sure that's how it was when they did the airplane scenes in Universal Studios or wherever this was filmed at. I'm sure it has their 1 or 2 little airplane things from back in the day that they would rotate around. But really, you did have that much space back in the day when you fly, even if you flew coach. It was just so much more spacious and elegant, and the upstairs downstairs thing was a thing, and you could actually stand and walk around and at the back and talk a little bit and everything too. It's not like how it is today. It was just really whatever. But this gets us into basically the end of Act 1, getting into Act 2 here, where Columbo is there at his apartment where they meet for the very first time. And Pixel, you were so taken by Columbo and his appearance. You go ahead and get us going here in this setup.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Can I just? I just wanted to add 2 things before we end Act 1. Again, this is one of those points where just the brilliant use of the sound, where you have the music that builds up the tension, and then you get the kind of the high pitched music of the killing act, and then her hand falls on the keys, and then boom, dead silence. I just love that scene. It's amazing. And then as you talked about too, this is one of the more brutal killings that you will see in a Columbo because of just the great close-ups of him strangling him. And then, you mentioned that the phone call, again, that's where we understand just how cold-blooded this guy is, because the phone's ringing, doesn't throw him off, kills her, casually goes, gets the phone, starts talking to his friend. I think it was the assistant DA friend that he was talking to. Mm-hmm. And he's just calm and collected, and then hangs up, and then the rest of the scene goes on.
I thought the music was it's definitely got the 60s vibe to it. It's a bit psychedelic, the opening and all that. I prefer what it turned into rather than what we had here. But yeah, what you're talking about, the timing of it, the music cues are definitely there too. Pixel?
I do want to mention one last thing. This fake out at the end, after they're getting ready to go to the plane, all the lights are off. We get this slow pan inside of the dark apartment, and we go to the telephone where a glove is laying there. And it's like, oh, is he going to slip up? And then
nope. He's too damn good.
No. So yes, after a short little showing of him dumping the stuff in Mexico, he comes home and walks through his apartment, and there is a suaver looking Columbo than we're used to. He's got his suit. It's a very nice suit. He's not wearing that big old coat that he loves, that I love seeing him in it, but it was such a different sight. Him with his hair actually in order. You're right. It is the best he's looked. But he is there pretty much to let him know.
Yeah, I just got to throw this in about the suits because it's such a treat to watch this here too. They've got the half-inch on the back of their collar spread. There's almost no pulling in the back. I mean, there are 1 or 2 buttons. It looks like they have the classic knit ties there, a little pin down there. I think for him, Gene Barry's looks a little bit more form-fitting, possibly European cut. But here's the thing with the suit that I always like to talk about when we talk stuff, because I like to talk of the fashion and food sometimes when we get into movies, is that you don't wear something where you look at it. And what I mean by that is if you're watching Peter Falk here, all your attention is on his face. And you could sit there and say that's based on how he's framed or whatever, but it's not, because it's at least a mid shot or whatever from his belly up, where he's holding the coat that he's carrying around that he doesn't wear as much. To your point there, Pixel, that's immediate observation based on the order we watched them. But you know, you have your classic solid combination that's as no frills as it gets there, rather than mixing in a pattern or 2 patterns. So 3 patterns is almost impossible to do even today. But the thing is you wear it based off like your skin tone, and so the attention is drawn not from what you're wearing, but to your face, which is the most important thing. And so the kind of beige cocoa-ish one that we see him out at the party is a little more, you know, casual than what we see here, which is this professional, like medium grayish one, whereas you got the hard gray one that Columbo wears, and all you're doing is staring right at his face. And I definitely do think people dress better in TV shows. That doesn't mean people don't dress expensive or don't find, you know, interesting things to wear and all that too. But there's a certain type of elegance when you're watching some of these old shows that even if the patterns on the dresses and stuff like that, the ladies wear is a little garish maybe at times, or the furniture might seem a little bit, oh my God, that's really, you know, old school. There was a style for it at the time, but like the women, everything's form-fitting without it being overly sexy, where things are dropping out and you see cleavage and that sort of stuff. But you know, it's interesting because as Pixel, you're starting to say about these two meeting, you know, he gets the call because his young squeeze misses him, and she's got this gorgeous pink dress on, because now she's got this role and whatever, but you're not sitting there staring at her chest or anything else there. It draws your eyes up into her face. At least that's how I see it. So it's an interesting thing to notice here when you're watching these things. Really long, beautiful hair, you know, whatever, and people are manicured. I mean, it's just, and to think you would do this for a TV show or a TV movie, whereas I think just things are pretty sloppy by today's standards. Anyway, keep going, Pixel, please.
Where was I? Oh, Columbo.
Yeah.
Columbo's there to go ahead and speak with him. He has the unfortunate news that he has to share that someone broke in and tried to kill his wife. And you can see the doctor's shock. He's walking away, and then he pauses. Tried to kill her? she's alive, and he's like blinking. He's like trying to get his thoughts in order. She's still alive. Tell me, how is she? Is she conscious or anything? Would you like a moment, some water, some brandy? No. Please tell me how she is. And then you go ahead and you bring up that a phone call is made from his main squeeze to go ahead and say, "Oh, but I needed to speak with you." No, we'll have an appointment first thing in the morning. And hangs up the phone, and they rush off to the hospital. They go up to the nurse running the front, and she's saying, "Oh, yes, she's in critical condition, which means she can't have any visitors. I'm sorry." And this is where Columbo gets to see as the doctor's trying to put all of his persuasion to use. I know the doctor running
the chief of staff.
Chief of staff right now. Please get him on the phone. I need to see her. And she's like, "He may be in surgery right now." "Yes, but you don't know that, do you? So please."
I thought he was very professional about the way he did it. It was very assertive. I don't think he was being an ass.
No, I don't think he was being an ass either. But how he was going about it was very...
That's the way to do it. If you're going to do it, that's how you do it, I think. And I'm giving him credit because we talked about him being cold-blooded here, you know, out of all of them. And so far, this is the second call he's gotten, right, where he can demonstrate to us as a viewer that he is calm, so much so that when Columbo goes to meet him and they walk into his office or whatever, he gets to see some stuff there too.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not saying you're wrong, but it's just how connected he is. He does have some powerful friends. Chief of staff of this hospital going ahead and getting him a direct line. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been allowed. It would have just been a no.
Well, and I think the reason for meeting the chief of staff is not because he's the guy that tries to a little bit later get Columbo kicked off the case. It's also the thing, if you haven't paid attention to it, or maybe it just got glossed over, but I think adds to something at the end, which I'll mention later, is that was, I think, a family friend. They knew each other for a long time. His wife had mentioned it to it. So there are these callbacks to the fact that this is not just rich society people attending a party and he's a stud. These are people that they've grown together with in some form or fashion, not just as professionals, but as friends that socialize together as well too. So it's a small, intimate group, which adds to the allure of, well, why would he want to kill his wife? Okay, you must want to say something during this scene here where they're talking.
Sure. This is, again, one of those things, and you would see it again throughout the history of Columbo, where it's the first reaction is what betrays him and initially raises Columbo's suspicions.
Yes.
And it's not so much the fact, and I've seen other people argue about this online, but it's not so much the fact of when he opens up the door saying, Carol, where are I'm home, or something like that, because that's normal. But you walk in, you see an outline on the floor, and you see a boarded up window in your sliding glass door, and your first reaction isn't to scream out, Carol, where are you? What's going on? Instead, he's his cold, calculated self, and then Columbo, of course, comes out of the room, and then Pixel, as you mentioned, when Columbo says, somebody tried to kill your wife, instead of the first reaction being, is she okay? He pauses, and then it's, she's still alive. And so again, he's too cold and calculated for his own good. And then, of course, that sets Columbo basically on the trail. And then, of course, we get the fantastic scene when we get up to the hospital room.
And, but we do also get to go ahead and see William Windom here as the DA. He goes ahead and comes in, and this is where we get our first hint. He makes that mention that you just said, honey, I'm home, or even just calling out to your wife whenever you get home. Nothing at all. And the DA isn't happy hearing that. He is instantly like, no, I don't like what you're insinuating here, the lieutenant. But sure enough, the chief of staff does come down and speaks to the doctor. He has clearance. So Columbo says, I'm going to join you. I have a man up there. And quickly, they go up to the room. The officer stationed outside the door says, I'm sorry, I can't let you in. That's my wife. I'm sorry, I can't let you in. The doctor is with her right now. She's conscious. Yeah. And you can see worry flicker back into Fleming's eyes. And it's like, oh, okay. And he's pacing back and forth as they're waiting for the doctor to come out. Yeah. Eventually he does, and the doctor has to break the news that your wife has passed away. But if it's any consolation, the last thing that she said was your name.
Yeah. Well, and again, where his coldness, betrays him, because again, when they said, when the policeman says, oh, your wife has woken up, the first reaction for me would be like, oh my God, can I go and see her? Or, oh, thank God, some kind of relief. We don't see that here. And then, of course, when the doctor comes out, and of course, his first thing is, well, did she say anything? And the great, kind of double meaning of, oh, yes, she said your name.
Yeah, I think right after this, when they kind of meet in his office, again, I've talked about the set pieces. Always love the fact that we've got great professional looking offices that people have, whether it's their homes or in his case, his where he works and everything too. And Columbo gets in there. So Columbo's in the lair. It's the first time we get to see it. And these two kind of really get into it. And that was nice, interesting back and forth, because there's really no let up or irritation. I mean, he's handling anything Columbo can give him. And then, of course, Columbo gets the name of this young woman that's getting ready to go in and see him, because I think if you guys recall, when he gets the call, he remembered the appointment for tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. So he puts that together, and he sees a young woman going in there, and of course that's a squeeze. And when they're talking, again, she's what you would, Carol Jackson from the 70s, Color for Women or whatever, would call a fall, because she's a ginger, she's redhead, but she's not the freckly kind. And she's got this pinkish kind of shirt on or whatever. It doesn't distract from her. Very elegant woman. And they're talking, and she's obviously an accomplice to this because she's into it, but it was different than the way we've seen other women so far in Columbo. And here's the thing. I'm going down the Gene Barry rabbit hole here a little bit, because now he's got the dark suit on, which I thought was, kind of adequate for morning and all that too, even though we're not thinking about it. He pours her 2 drinks, and they're standing there. And again, it's like a play, because that's one camera shot. It's not bouncing between 2-3 cameras like you would get on a lot of studio TV or like comedy sitcoms and everything too. And you see him basically saying, look, we want a future together. We're trying to be together. This is what has to happen. He gives her just enough of a vote of confidence where she's like, okay. And you can almost see her believing it. And it's important because this guy's not smiling. He's not being whatever. He does kiss her. It's just, I'm going, God, is he going to pull this off? Why does he want this younger woman? I know the answer can be just because she's young. But again, I think we're planting seeds here for what's going to happen at the end. But while he's doing that, there's a rustling at the door. And I have to admit, guys, I did not like the scene, because this is the classic, oh, you better go hide in the bedroom while I go answer the door, and it's Columbo. Because Columbo was going to meet him like at 5-6 o'clock or whatever to look for some stuff or whatever. And he's like, well, hey, basically you gave me permission. That's okay. This exchange is why I thought this is getting dark, because Columbo's not smiling. He's not giving you that, hey, I'm an affable kind of from, you're taking me for granted because my hair's messy and I'm slouched over even more. Here, he's a bit of a dick to the guy, because right here he could have sit there and said, Columbo, I'm busy. Come back at 5 o'clock, in 2 hours, and we can talk then or whatever. And he doesn't do it. And I'm like, okay, we know he's going to get away with having the chick in there or whatever. But it's interesting, because to me, this is really when you see Columbo turn to it, and I thought, wow, what a different Columbo. And here he's actually wearing his jacket and going through it. But there's a nice shot where, he's trying to stand in such a way and hide the 2 glasses or whatever, because he knows Columbo would be looking for it. So this is some great film work too. And the one thing Gene Barry does do well is he's able to kind of do what a lot of people do, and that's act without doing something. And I've mentioned this in a lot of Columbo episodes. We've seen Columbo cooking. We see him smoking a cigar. It's easier to kind of act to look natural when you have a physical action to be doing, whether you're pouring drinks or walking around and turning. But when you're just standing there with your hand having to be placed in a certain way, and you're holding the other hand and you're trying to look elegant, that's not easy to do. And he does such a great job with her about it. Columbo answers the door, and it turns out that's the dress that they're wanting to look for and everything too. So I thought it gave him a chance to hide the drinks. This is compelling TV, because if you're listening to it, you're going to miss it. And that's one of the things that I always liked about television is that if it's just a data dump where people are talking, you can figure it out. That's kind of crap. This is very, very strong, because we're seeing the same place a few times too. We even see here briefly after the scene where a guy comes in, where, basically confesses to the crime. And of course that's just way too easy. We're an hour into the episode, and to me, honestly, this is why I said to you earlier, Pixel, where I felt like this took forever to get there and you felt like it went fast. It's because of all these things. And the music, I gotta say this, okay, to me, it really, in the second half or maybe the last act, really seemed to vanish. It wasn't that glaring, overly strong, horns and everything that you got at the beginning of psychedelic stuff. It really is just almost them talking a little bit. And I think it adds to the tension in this last act here, as he basically says to Columbo, hey, look, I'm almost starting to think that you think maybe I killed her. And he's like, no. And even then, this exchange, I'm like, man, Peter Falk's really a dick in here. He's like, he's basically telling him, hey, fuck you, I'm going to get you. We don't get that vibe at all from him. And I have to say, it's different to me, but I like how intense the stares and all that. Not this lovable goofball guy smoking a cigar stuff. This is hardcore intensity. And I'm going, man, Gene hasn't flinched and Peter hasn't flinched. This is good shit. This is the scene, of course, where right at the end where he meets his buddy and basically tries to get Columbo taken off the case or whatever. So that was a big chunk. Let me pause and let you guys catch up.
Yeah, I just want to go ahead and mention the whole reason why that they went through that whole, oh, well, I'm coming to your apartment to go ahead and check in early to see if I can find those gloves, because she left the gloves in her purse. So she has to bring them back. Need an hour. They set the gloves. Oh, I'll hide them somewhere. Don't worry. Here, you want a drink? And that's when Columbo's at the door.
Yep.
So they hide her away. And whenever he goes to get him, and you can feel the intensity of, oh, isn't that funny? We looked through that set from top to bottom and couldn't find them. But you did. That's very good. But what about the dress? Do you think that could be in there? Oh, well, maybe in the laundry hamper. But no. We can worry about that later. No, since I'm here anyway, we can go ahead and check. And again, our killer is saved by some sort of bell as door has the dress there. Okay, you have no reason to go in the bedroom, Columbo.
And the only real part in this hour, other than his suspicion, and LK, I don't know if you caught this, is that when they show us the beautiful exchange between flying there and how nice the people were getting him a ticket and all that, was that he was a few pounds overweight, that he just said, okay, just put it on my credit card. And as easy as it sounds, guys, credit in terms of credit cards was relatively new at that time. Lines of credit with people in stores ownership was a little different back in the day. So it's kind of a big deal where they was a few pounds overweight, because Columbo's basically saying, hey, I noticed when you went there to Acapulco, we couldn't get a hold of you, which is reasonable at the time, small town, and getting in another country, getting whereabouts is not easy, plus out of your jurisdiction. But he knew that he went, it's conservation energy. He went there with 13 pounds overweight and he came back only 9 pounds overweight or something, whatever the difference was.
Yeah, he came back 4 pounds overweight, and Columbo's like, where'd that 9 pounds go?
Yeah, that's the only solid thing he's got besides his suspicions, which I like. There's not a lot of meat for him to chew on.
No. Oh yeah, no, it's great. But again, one of the interesting things, and is one of the keys is always that the murderer gets tripped up on something, because no plan goes perfect, and we get that in a later great joust between Columbo and Fleming here. Is that for as smart and brilliant as he is, he forgets about the cleaning. He should have been able to say, oh, well, I know my wife had scheduled a cleaning pickup, because he was there on the phone, and that was part of that was part of their plan, was the cleaning pickup. But Columbo's got him so rattled, he forgets about it.
But I suppose they could argue that under the circumstances, you could say, well, I just can't remember everything. I'm just so grief-stricken and whatever. I think he did mention at one point they had no argument because that was a cover. Well, I mean, that's true, right? You're not in your right mind. That's why people say never, ever talk to a police officer. If someone rear-ends you, it's typically 100% usually the person behind you's fault, but you don't get out and say, are you all right? And do all that. Cop says stuff to you, and the cop puts that in his report. Later on, you don't have the ability to tell the judge, I just wasn't my right mind. I was so nervous by the rarity of the situation, or I wasn't myself. You give yourself an opportunity to cage yourself in. And up to this point, I think a lot of those things, LK, were reasonable, but you could tell this is not the path they were going down. And nothing's more apparent than that when Columbo comes in to see him in his office here, and they have this exchange about Columbo letting him know. Look, and Columbo's fucking with him now. He's pissed. He's like, he lets him know that, he's been asked to be taken off the case, and he's always thought about seeing a shrink. And they have this exchange that actually illustrates his ability to analyze people, and they're having a drink and all that too. But even at this point, what I kind of didn't like is them talking about the hypothetical situation here, what type of killer we're looking for. But you look at late 1960s psychoanalysis, you only had certain things coming up too, and things are a lot different now in terms of the whole psychoanalytical world than what it was back then, in terms of not having many meds. Even though this guy gave somebody prescription meds, it's different. So I thought, okay, this is kind of plausible here. Hey, what kind of person are we looking for? And so they talk about the type of person they would have, and it'd be easy for him to say he was popping himself talking to Columbo, but he doesn't come across that way. He's so measured here. I feel like he doesn't slip it. It's just a great performance.
It really is. It really is. But I also love, because we've already gone through all of season one, when the doctor goes ahead and pretty much calls Columbo out, saying that you go ahead and you let yourself in. You're very likable. You're very nice, and you hide this intelligence that you
Yes.
have behind this kind of buffoonery that you show, this bumbling oaf persona, which we've already been saying because that's what he does. And it's like, this is the first one to come out. We didn't see it. So to have this saved until where we are now is great. It's like perfect. And after that, Columbo gets badass.
Yeah, well, we're definitely gonna bring some stuff up here because we're getting close to the end of the episode here, and I just the takeaway I think from here, and okay, I don't know if you've got anything else to add to it, is hey, the guy's got the liquor hidden behind like a push button in the wall too, behind some stuff, which is cool, and Columbo's marking out over some of the stuff, and of course he's got just a really nice office or whatever. I thought it was neat.
Oh yeah, no, the office setting is fantastic. Now, again, two things is that, again, you can tell that Columbo has gotten under this cold and controlling person's skin, because again, he screws up by asking to try and get Columbo taken off the case, because his personality, what happens when somebody gets under your skin, you go to try and get rid of them and, try to bully and manipulate your situation. And then of course, in that great exchange, Columbo sets the trap because he's playing to, Fleming's ego and, nature, and he can't help himself but, to show off how smart and brilliant he is by, explaining, oh, well, this is the type of person that you would be looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got about 20 minutes left in the episode. I'm going, oh my God, is it really going to come to an end? Because I think one of the scenes that happens next is perhaps one of the strongest. Typically, what we saw in season 1 is where Columbo would go the ancillary route, where he'd find out somebody and get to the boss by going through his subordinates, if you want to look at it in that type of relationship. Here, he has not gone to the guy's, lover really that much, but now he's waiting for her, and he goes to talk to her for a little bit, and he's basically, he knows at this point, but he basically just friggin' gets so pissed at her. And I thought she did a great job here in terms of acting, because it's almost believable, but they're trying to be a couple, and he's like, it's, if he basically says, hey, look, fine, I get you're not going to say anything or word like that, but then he tries to convince her, and you almost believe his speech about, well, just come on down and make a statement, because right now it's just accessory and that's all it is, or whatever. And then she goes, no. And then she gets strong talking to him, which was a thing for her. And I thought that was good, because it seems like she's got an assertiveness issue, young woman, good looking, coming to Hollywood in the land of men, trying to make herself something. She gets an actual job on a movie set. That's where she was able to get the props. And we see her actually becoming, again, less of a girl and more of a woman. Definitely. And then here she basically is like, and she just walks off. And there's a nice little shot where he gets pissed at her. And this is something we've never seen. I don't know if we ever will in the Columbo episode. He gets hot with her, and he basically says, hey, look, you are the weakest thing in his entire situation. This is what I think happened, and I am going to come after you day after day until I break you to get to him. Oh, that's almost verbatim. And it's like, you asshole. I mean, he's not fucking around. He even raises his voice. And I'm like, what is this Columbo? I mean, this is, if you saw this first and then watch season 1, you'd be like, wow, they really toned it down, because he's not, again, he's just intense. There's a darkness to it that's not present there at all in season 1. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's very striking, because he's got this look of incredulousness on his face talking to her, but it's a beautiful shot, because she stops and there's 2 pillars and she's there, and then she just keeps walking off like, fuck you. I'm like, oh, he got owned. He is, oh man, he's pissed. That really stood out to me. And then, of course, they just have a few scenes after that of her being followed and whatnot too, until we get towards the very final scene, which I will pause on. What did you guys make of this? Or am I making too much of it?
No, you're not making too much of it at all. Oh my God, I loved it. It was so brutal. And then after that scene where she is strong enough to weather this storm, he's outside. And he watches her. She's going to her car, and he's just standing there and his head's following. Then he gives a nod, and then you can see a police officer goes ahead and he starts up his car and they're tailing her. And it's just like Columbo's got all this power all of a sudden. It's like, holy crap. It's great.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, this is probably the one scene that people point out in terms of a difference between, the Columbo you see in the early movie here and how he's portrayed throughout the rest of the series. This was a scene you would say it was standard that you would see like in a police procedural, of the detective, beating up a witness or an accomplice, verbally, yelling at them. And I know that, some people, today, raise the fact of, when she asked for a lawyer, did Columbo just violate her Miranda rights?
Yeah.
Because it's interesting. And so, I mean, what's interesting is the play was 1962. Miranda was decided in 66, and this was in 68. So from the play perspective, yes, he's fine. 68, it's fine. And I mean, certainly that, Fleming, who we know would hire a great defense attorney, would certainly raise and try to get, that evidence thrown out, even though she later on agrees to participate. But it's a fantastic scene. And again, it's a very rare, explosive, angry Columbo that, we see. It does happen again throughout the series, but it's very, very rare.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing we see is basically the lover calls him to kind of give him a heads up, and he's like, yeah, he's trying to work us. He wants us to get together or see that we're getting together or whatever. So he's basically saying cool it or whatever like that. And I think she says I love you, but he doesn't say it back. You can tell his mind is like turning on like how to handle this situation, because Columbo's definitely amped it up. And after their little back and forth in his office on his own terms, now it's like, okay, are we playing on Columbo's terms? How do I get out of it? But the thing is when he goes to his office the next day, his secretary, as I like to say it, the British way, they can't get a hold of her. And then it turns out something bad's happened. It appears she overdosed on the pills that he had given her. And again, it's maybe been, a week or two, I think, during the course of this episode, or the timeline and all that. And there's this absolutely incredible shot of him driving up there, and he's there, and he's like, I'm sorry. She's in the pool. They go up there. They're pulling the body out. And this shot of these two talking while it's overlooking the smog of downtown LA, because it's like from the Hollywood Hills, is absolutely fantastic. And I'm going, he's going to get away with it. I know he's not, because it's Columbo, but I'm going, and I got guys. I ain't going to lie to you. I got, and I did it to myself because I was focusing on other things here too. But it's when they talk about the hypothetical stuff or like that, he kind of brings up the hypothetical conversation he had before about, well, hypothetically, would this kill her, blah, blah. And he's like, no, basically, I would have never loved her, blah, 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 and all that. And they're talking back and forth. And then she comes down the hall because she's heard what she needs to hear. So the body they pulled out was another fucking actress that they got in there. And so basically, he's saying that he killed her or whatever like that, admitting it. It's so stupid. I should have seen it coming, but I was so focused on something else I'll talk about here for my final thoughts. I just thought it was a great ending to an episode. It almost felt, I was more mad at myself for not seeing obviously what was right there in front of us too, that, I'm beating myself. I've got that kind of internal guilt thing going on here too. But I was like, God damn it, this guy is so good. He was so good up here. And it's literally the last minute. Go ahead, Pixel.
It's not him though. It's not what he did. It's him saying that when they reveal that Joan's actually alive, she's giving her statement. So she's giving them everything they need to put him away, because he didn't love her. He was using her.
Yeah.
Trying to just get rid of the wife. You know what? Maybe in this hypothetical, an accident would occur. Who knows? But it doesn't matter.
Yep.
You have nothing. And hey, look, there's something.
That's all the leverage she needed. That's all she needed to hear for the leverage. And it's all because he didn't say, I love you on the phone call before. I'll have a couple more comments here for my final thoughts too. But LK, I know you got a lot to say.
Well, again, I mean, it becomes a hallmark of Columbo where we get, the great kind of final act. And, the reveal. There's a lot of similarities that you'll see in kind of later Columbo episodes. I'm sure that you recognize there's definitely some similarities to this and suitable for framing.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, it's interesting too. I mean, kind of from a police perspective, his confession is certainly admissible at his trial because he's not in custody. He goes up there freely on his own, and again, his nature, he can't help himself because of his ego and how he believes he's the most brilliant person in every room that he walks into.
Yep.
I'm getting away with it, and then the great comeuppance.
Yeah, my final thoughts are this. This final scene here where he's like, okay, come on, let's take a statement. They keep the camera shot on them the whole time while they walk to this other room. Again, the way it's shot, you can see all of downtown and also the living room we're in. And he just stands there and it says the end. And usually I turn it off immediately, but I just kept it on going, okay, what's Gene Barry going to do? Is he going to say something or what? And so what he just stands there outside and he just takes out a cigarette case and starts lighting one up while they're in the background talking. I thought, that's a friggin' incredible shot. And all I got to say is this, Gene Barry absolutely crushed it in here. He made the episode. Other people in here were okay. I'm glad this episode let him be the star of it because that's how it felt. I like how Columbo there at the end just didn't say anything to him, just stared at him. Nobody broke, for lack of a better term. It's basically like a draw. By far one of the best individual performances I've seen in Columbo so far at this point, and I'm not exaggerating. I think it was tremendous. And I was surprised by how good it was. I was expecting it to be a little different. I wasn't expecting it to be dark. I thought it would be a little more choppy, perhaps because of that. But no. The TV show kind of watered down a little bit based off of how strong this episode was. And the big thing I want to say about this being a feminist episode is from his perspective, the thing is, as I said, well, you don't know why he wants her. Is he going to kill the young one? Basically, he got rid of his wife and he replaced his wife with just a younger version of the same relationship he had. Somebody he didn't love, somebody that he would maybe only have duty sex with. I'm not saying he's a closet homosexual or anything like that at all, but there's definitely something very strong, I feel, and very obvious about this episode because his lover goes from being very sexy and wet in the pool to having a different hairstyle and dressing almost like his wife does at the end, to the very same style and almost color as some of the outfits. And she even, let's be honest, guys, part of it is she plays his wife in the early part of it too. So I had no idea what to make of that, but I thought it was so obvious, and I thought that was a nice in-your-face kind of commentary on late 1960s roles of men and women with a dynamic like it. And that's why I say it's a very strong feminist episode, if that's your thing. I'm not saying I'm pro-feminist or I'm anti. I'm simply saying, wow, at that time to have something like this happen, I wasn't expecting it because we don't know anything about him other than he was very smart and almost got away with it. And it's a testament to how strong his character was. I think it's a fantastic episode, definitely one of the best so far that I've seen. My final thoughts. Pixel, what about you?
I have to agree that this is probably one of the best that we've seen. It might be the best just because there's such a strength to it that, I mean, yes, it did have a little more time, and yes, it did have its run as a play first, but it's incredible. I really can't think of any other words to go ahead and describe how much I loved seeing this episode. And I'm glad that we waited. I really am. Glad we came back to it too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic movie, episode, whatever you want to call it. You can see the framework of what comes afterwards. In this case too, you can also, if you really look closely, you kind of see, the different kind of stage play, scenes in it. But it works so well because you have two great actors playing off of each other. And their confrontation scenes are just, fantastic. So, yeah, you can immediately see why this resonated so well with audiences and why, NBC came back and said, hey, can you do another one? And, oh, hey, can you turn this into a movie series here? We've got this idea.
Yeah, it was great. And Barry is just phenomenal. And let's be honest, when we see these two guys, even though Falk looks kind of young and polished as opposed to what we'd come to know, at least from season one, and how he would, of course, age and continue on. They both seem like men. They both seem like professionals. We don't get any weird stuff. There's no fluff in this episode. There's no bullshit in the background or like that. It's a great episode. Excellent thing. And wow, what a way to start off not even a TV show, but just to see if people would like it before deciding if it's worth it. And that's why they did a second one, which next week here on the Extreme Movie Show, we will be reviewing that. And then a week after that, we'll probably do some sort of ranking of all of them too. And that'll be kind of interesting as we wrap up season 1 here of Columbo. Any other final thoughts, guys?
No, just one more thing. Good night.
Good night now.
This was not a Dan Curtis production.